And the connection has always been so wonky over on Facebook that I decided I'm going to try and continue to do these videos over here live on YouTube because I think it's a little bit more stable. In addition, I just recently got a new internet connection via T-Mobile Internet Wi-Fi. I'm trying that out for free, and I'm hoping that's going to be better for my rural home internet because my download speeds on TDS have been like 5 megabytes per second, and on the T-Mobile, it's actually upwards of 70 to 100 and something download speeds with them. The upload speeds are still a little wonky, but they are better. Like it was barely making 1 as an upload speed on TDS, and with the T-Mobile, it's at the lowest, it's around 2, but it can get as high as 5. So I'll have to figure out why the upload speeds are so dramatically lower, but it's still better. And it's raining, and I don't see that I'm having much connection issue. So I'm fingers crossed, and it's going to be cheaper. So I've been with Verizon for years because we live out in the sticks, and it's kind of one of those things that you're just like, okay. So I can't really do much content because I have this unreliable system, and my phone is now like 4 years old, and it's full, and I can't get as many apps on it, and so I can't do all this content that I want to do. So, but there's a lot of things I want to say. And today I want to talk about mental health in this country. As I've said before, well, actually not on YouTube, over on Facebook, I have a channel called Out of the Forest. Now, Out of the Forest has been kind of a conglomeration of varying content. So I was working with doing short films, re-editing some old Super 8 footage my father had taken and turning them into video content. That a lot of it was very interesting and historical, and I've shared that there. I had always intended for this to be kind of a discussion about mental health and how to get out of the how to get out of the forest. Now, this is not a negative thing on forest. I believe that everybody should get out into nature, take a hike, camp, do those things, get close to nature. That's really good. What I'm speaking of when I'm talking about the out of the forest, it's basically when you get lost in a forest. You know, usually in mythological circles, people talk about being lost in a forest and you can't find your way out. You're just lost. And so how are we going to get out of that forest so we can see what is before us and enjoy life again? So that's kind of where that metaphor comes from. So I'm not against forests. I like forests, and there's a way that we can actually learn to adapt and connect with forests in a healthy way that can maybe help us do that. So what brings me here today? I'm going to do a lot of self-disclosure, which can be quite terrifying, but I am 54. That's the first terrifying thing. I'm telling you my age. But I'm doing this because I have recently felt very strongly about doing some self-advocacy and activism. I've always been kind of an activist-oriented person. I think that one of the best ways that we can really change things in our society for the better is if we have healthy discussions and we do have information about them. I have had mental health issues my entire life. I was originally diagnosed with severe anxiety neurosis. That was what it was called in 1978. As I said, I am 54 years old. By 1980, I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. I knew that was going to happen. and I can't pause it, so he's just going to have to wait. And struggled. And I'll tell flat out, I had a lot of privilege. My mother was, although she was a single mother, my parents were divorced. They both had substance abuse problems. They both were alcoholics. My mother became sober in 1972. However, she was a well-paid doctor. She was an anesthesiologist. And they got divorced in 1977. They were married in 1966. I was born in 68. I witnessed a little bit of domestic conflict in the home. Nothing as toxic as maybe other people have experienced, but I had, and I'll go into that later. That's not really the story I want to tell right now, but why I think I came to be the person I am. And I felt like I need to tell my story because I don't see my story in a lot of other people's story. And I don't like overgeneralizing mental health or making stereotypes about mental health, because mental health issues can happen for anybody. Okay. So to stereotype and say it's only that kind of a person that can struggle with mental health issues or have ADHD, or that ADHD is just about this, or anxiety takes its shape like this. I think that those are really bad stereotypes, and they can cause a lot of stigma and a lot of frustration for people who are like, oh, that's not me. And you gaslight yourself and saying, oh, no, I didn't do that, and it can cause a lot of problems. And I think we need to be frank. I think we need to have a new conversation around mental health. I am not a licensed mental health professional. I could say that I am a quote unquote licensed professional patient, as I have been in therapy on and off my entire life. Okay. So I do know the system. I have been very aware of it. And I have worked in the mental health field doing administrative functions for a nonprofit mental health agency. So I've seen lower income mental health treatment, the policies, procedures, how that's run. I have participated in mental health. I've read tons of books. So I have my own experience, and I think that it's valid. And I have a master's degree in library science. I have an undergraduate degree in communications. I did the 7-year route in my undergraduate. I was raised an only child by a single mother, as I said. And I've done all sorts of stuff. So that's my experience. That is what I bring to the table in terms of being able to talk to anybody about my views about what is wrong with our mental health treatment system. This is primarily going to be focused on the American model of mental health, why we're having such a bad time of it, the stigmas, the issues around it, the stereotypes, the misunderstandings, the assumptions, all that stuff have really contributed to it. And it's, with the pandemic, it really has become a big issue, primarily, contributed to the fact that that there's a lot more pressure on the system, and that there is not as many providers out there. There's a shortage provider, and it's very hard to get treatment. And I have run into that. So I want to talk about the insurance system, how insurance doesn't really help with this matter, how there's a lot of gatekeeping on social media groups, a lot of gatekeeping, a lot of places. You have to pay to play. You can pay for $100 plus hour-long therapy appointment, or have access to these workshops, that workshop. You really do have to have a lot of money in order to be able to access some of the more quality mental health treatments in this country. I think that a lot of mental health issues in this country are allowed to flourish. It can be beneficial for certain types of people if they have access to certain types of medications or supplements or nootropics that can give them an advantage. I think that your mental health can be affected where you grew up, where you lived, how your upbringing was, how your schooling was. If you were unduly influenced by religious or cult-like knowledge and ignorance. Poverty obviously is a big one. Stressors, trauma. But even trauma, and I'll get into this, trauma isn't just, oh, they were in a war zone or they were in a really rough neighborhood and saw a lot of like gang violence, okay? Or they were sexually abused. I mean, those are trauma, certainly, but that is not the end all and be all of what trauma includes. And so bringing an awareness about that is also really important. So, I'm going to discuss all these issues because I really feel very strongly about it. What has brought me to the table today and recently is that I have been going through a really, really rough time. And I feel very isolated. I think that the pandemic has increased the isolation. And we've all known this. We've seen articles. I have gotten COVID. I have been vaxxed, but see, this is one of the other things about what is going on sociopolitically that is creating a lot of stress and tension and anxiety and angst between groups that normally got along. And now we're fighting over things like vaccinations, and there's a lot of hatred and stigma and meanness and bashing, and it's not productive. And we're living in a very, very stressful time. I always pride myself. I think that it is good to be resilient and healthy and have a good, healthy, positive mindset, but that isn't always possible. People are wired differently, and I'm wired very differently than someone who's more optimistic. And you know what? That's okay. But it's just being aware of it so you can navigate that. And a lot of people, one of the biggest issues I have, I'm more pagan centered. I was raised Christian. I'm more pagan centered. And I've been struggling a lot with my spirituality, which has affected my mental health. How I talk to my higher power, whatever it is, I struggle with that. I'm very agnostic right now. And then also, when you're trying to set goals or trying to manifest positive things in your life, all that language is based on people who have a more neurotypical mindset, that they can say, oh, I'm going to be grateful about this, or have a positive mindset, or think positively about things. Well, what do you do when you're depressed? What do you do when you have ADHD? What do you do when, those things can affect. And so if you feel shut out from a practice such as manifestation magic, in whatever form you want to take it, whether it's witchy magic, manifestation, collaging, whatever, the focus in this country has always been about, well, you've got to be positive, you've got to be resilient, you got to be hopeful, you got to all these things, which is very hard for people who have mental health issues. And so we're a lot of times cut out and shamed for not thinking more positively. If we say a negative thing, we're shamed for that. If we have a bad day and we're really depressed and down on ourselves or negative, people will turn around and say, well, no wonder your life isn't working for you. You're so negative. You're so, and that's not helpful. So, I mean, people that have mental health treatment can't access that stuff because it's all designed. The whole positive thinking movement thing is all designed for people who are neurotypical and who are generally built with a more optimistic, positive mind frame. But for people who struggle with mental health issues, we're shut out of that entire thing because there's nothing, like, people don't relate and go, oh, well, you should just say positive things and like fake it till you make it and all that other kind of stuff. And I think that kind of mindset, that assumption from neurotypicals to neurodivergent people is very damaging and it's very dismissive. So I want to talk about those issues as well. And, I also want to talk about the system at large and how society has exacerbated a lot of these issues. The externalities, things that we have control over, mythologies and mythologies and cultural expectations in this country, how those are shifting, what they used to be, all that brainwashing, how it's continued to be brainwashing, the messages we get from media, how toxic it is, confusing, and it's ironic. I was also diagnosed, and this is going to be a very scary thing to say because I probably shouldn't tell anybody this, is that I had been diagnosed when I was trying to find my ADHD medication back in 2020, trying to get a new provider. I found a provider and she diagnosed me with borderline personality disorder, which kind of blew me out of the water. It was a really hard diagnosis to come to terms with. But when I did, a lot of light switches went on. I was like, wow. And honestly, I prefer to use the term emotional dysregulation and some other terms, as I don't like, because there's so much stigma attached to borderline. I'm a quiet type person, meaning that I turn inward. I'm not an external. I don't hurt other people. I don't go on crazy, weird thing on other people. It's always turned in on me, and it's been very desperate. I've cut myself. I have scars on my arms. I did that primarily when I was in college. Even Princess Diana was a cutter. So, these things are happening. So, but it opened up a lot of things for me. It has not been an easy journey though. I mean, it's not like, I really wish, even though there has been so much stigma around that diagnosis, I really wish someone had said something more to me about it so I was a little bit more aware, because I always wondered, like, I have ADHD, but how come I'm not functioning like that ADHD person over there? Why am I struggling with these issues over here? I don't understand. I don't understand why I'm struggling with stress, why I don't handle stress, why I have meltdowns. I don't manage it. My body is just not wired to manage stress or difficulties. And I can scream. I can probably act to other people now. And the whole issue of Karenism, that's another issue I want to talk about, that I would look like a Karen, because you have a temper tantrum. When you're an adult, you're not supposed to have those kinds of responses. But there's a reason why people have those responses, and it's because they have a very, very dysregulated nervous system. And science is coming out to understand that more about the vagal nerve, the vagus nerve, and how our fight or flight, the whole 9 yards. That is what goes on in my body. And that was a huge piece that I only got a few years ago, to understand how I respond to stimuli, to stress, to certain events, to people, the whole 9 yards. And I had been regulating it, even though I didn't really know why I dealt with that stuff. Like I would say, I don't handle stress well. That's how I would describe it. And I would realize, like, I'm starting to get upset, and I might have to go to a dark room, or I might have to take a timeout. But my timeouts aren't just 5 minutes, or like can be an hour, because it takes a long time for my body to kind of get back into a regulated state. I'm quick to get upset and jump, because it's that fight or flight thing, and it's very slow. Now there's tools that you have to train yourself to be able to do, so it is treatable. All that stuff is treatable. The abandonment issue with borderline, that's very real. There's another issue that's primarily, I think, a lot with what it's called. There's a name for it, where object impermanence. So when we struggle, if there's something not in our line of sight, if we put it away, we forget about it. Yeah, wow. I don't know if that came through. There's a big storm coming through, and the signal seems to be doing okay. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle to deal with that. With the ADHD, it's like you're constantly having to manage a very complex life, and you're expected to in this country. You're expected to, go bada bing, bada boom, and kind of like hustle and be a good entrepreneur. I mean, that's the focus. Be a salesperson, entrepreneur, da 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 da. And you have to be, even if you're an artist, you're expected to be a competent business person, and sell yourself and have all this self-confidence. Well, that's great for neurotypicals. It's not so great for people who have mental health issues. Now, I'm creative. I'm smart. I'm talented. But I struggle to manifest that. Not manifest. Well, I do. I struggle to manifest it, but I also struggle to present it to the world in a competent, reliable, stable place that gets attention. Like, that's the other thing. It's like, if you have crippling low self-esteem, how are you going to sell yourself and say, hey, look at the thing I made. That's my coffee. And it's talented, and I deserve $200 for this thing I made. Those are all issues that can really devastate you. I've stayed in the same job I've been at for 20 years because I've had too much anxiety to try and find another job that would pay well, because there's uncertainty right now. Especially, I feel very vulnerable. I don't feel at my best. I'm in a very low point right now in my mental health. So it's challenging. And I am getting assistance because I'm an older, because I realize I do need to get a different kind of situation. But there isn't really a whole lot of help. I wanted to do more remote work. Well, I had a lousy internet connection. Hopefully this will solve it. But there's a lot of different things, and people that don't really, there are people who have mental health issues. They don't even know they've got help. They're in such denial about it. And I had that a little bit too, because you're able to float, you're able to compensate and mask it. And because you're expected to mask it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, fake it till you make it, keep calm and carry on, those kinds of things, because hey, life is hard, but you just got to make the best of it and just push on through. And I've done that for so long, increasingly in a system that is very, very broken. And after a while, that I can't keep pushing through because it is so toxic and so broken out there that it's damaged me. Every time I break through that glass wall or break through that wall, those parts of me get broken. And there's a point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And that's where I'm at. But I'm picking myself up today again, and I'm trying this over again with YouTube Studio, and maybe putting this on YouTube instead, and hopefully maybe gain an audience, have some conversations about stuff, and talk about these issues and other issues as well, because I really feel strongly about it. I just don't want people to become complacent into these stereotypical notions about what it is, because it's a very complex thing. There's no one type of mental health issue, and they're all very different. I think there's a lot of stigma now also because of a lot of the violence. There's people who are very dark, that have more psychopathic tendencies and dark mental health, that are a little bit more harmful to society. And how do we handle that in our society? So, but we don't want to scare people and go, oh, well, you have a mental health issue, I'm going to stay away from you because you might kill me, or you might, and it's like, no, that's not how it is. So I think it's really important to continue this conversation. I've been feeling for months like I need to start this conversation, especially because it's hitting so close to home with me right now. So anyway, I welcome you. Thank you very much for your time. And I'm hoping that these videos maybe will be 30 minutes. It's already 24 minutes, but I don't want to keep them too long. But I hope everyone will join me. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll have some other fun stuff. I'm planning on doing some art today. I'd like to videotape it, upload it, so you can kind of see my art process as well, because art is a really highly functional thing. And hopefully, maybe if I can get it together, and find some people that I can actually have conversations with, about things like art therapy. I actually have a lot of family that are into art therapy and other modalities. So maybe I can have interviews with them and other people and their journey in mental health. So thank you very much for joining me, and stay safe.